Welcome back. Well, I'm sure you've tried to quit your addiction many times. So, you know how it goes. You pick the date, you get yourself prepared, and the time comes, and however long you last, whether that's hours, days, weeks, maybe months, or even years, however long that lasts, something sends you back into your addiction. That's why you're here. We need to understand this. We need to overcome this. And what sends you back to your addiction is one of these 6 key relapse traps. So by the end of this video, you're going to be empowered with a real understanding so that you can be prepared for when one of these 6 relapse traps occurs. You'll be prepared already, and you'll be able to then carry forward and actually quit your addiction. So let's get straight into it. The most common, I would say, trap that causes people, in my experience, to go back into their addiction is withdrawals. Now, withdrawals is a kind of an umbrella term. I mean, it's a bucket that has a lot in it. But let's simplify that. What we're talking about with withdrawals, we're talking about a combination of mental and physical and emotional symptoms or phenomena. So we have mental cravings and we have physical cravings in the body, and we can also have emotions like anxiety. We can have a fear. We can have this sense of urgency. So that's a lot to handle. And we are not really prepared for that. We don't generally understand how to approach that other than just to use willpower. But and willpower, what is that? Well, willpower is really delaying, putting a block on taking action, isn't it? So let's drill down and understand that a bit more. On the one hand, you've got your conscious mind, and that's the part of your mind that decides that you don't want your addiction and puts the block in place to stop the action. And on the other side, you've got your subconscious mind, which is promoting the addiction, which is, creating these cravings and this fear and this anxiety. And so you've got this inner conflict, haven't you? I've talked about that in one of my other videos. And this tension that goes on is usually what causes people to relapse. It's one of the main reasons. And if you look at most programs, they all involve willpower at some point. In fact, I was even looking at, a very popular and, very authoritative psychiatrist in the field of addiction literally yesterday, and being interviewed. And, there's so much understanding about how the brain works and how addiction occurs and, the prevalence of different personality types and all of that. But when it came down to the actual methods of quitting, it was all about, basically mindset to support willpower. And in my world, it's totally in agreement with all the mindset and all of the other, understanding about addiction. But what's missing, the missing piece is how to quit without willpower, how to end this inner conflict between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And that's not the subject of this video. I've talked about that before. But essentially what you need to do is learn some skills. You need for the conscious and subconscious to work together, not fight each other. They both want the same thing. They both want you to be safe and happy. They both want you to be without pain and having some pleasure, or at least just contentment. And contentment is actually a really deep pleasure. So both the conscious and subconscious want this for you. So, there is a way. And if you're interested in learning more about that, just go back to one of my previous videos, maybe the first one in this channel. So you really, if you want to handle withdrawals without relapse and without conflict, you really do need to prepare. You do need to learn some skills, and you need to learn the understanding about why and how those skills work. So the next relapse trap is strong emotions. I'm sure you've had the circumstance yourself where you might have you might have quit and been sober or abstinent for a long time. And you think you've really, ended your addiction. You hardly think about it. And maybe you don't get cravings very often, or at least you're not recognizing them if they are, because they're so subtle. And then some strong emotion occurs, and suddenly the cravings come on strong. Now, you may not have got to that point where you have had very few cravings, but you might have just quit for, some weeks or months, and it seemed like you've beaten it because each day is easier and easier. But then the strong emotion occurs. Could be some upset between, friends or family. Could be some bad news, some shocking news. It could be, some accident or traumatic event that's occurred. But this strong emotion, what's going on there? Why does that cause us to relapse? Well, in my understanding and the way I approach it, if you get cravings at that point when the strong emotion occurs, what that really means is that the neural network that produces cravings in your brain, that dopamine pathway that produces the craving, that has never been, in a sense, changed. The pathway to promote your addiction is still in place. It just went dormant. So whatever method you were using to quit at that time wasn't a complete method, because you still had this latent or dormant potential for craving. See, a person that hasn't had an addiction, they don't have this pathway. They don't get cravings for addiction when a strong emotion occurs. So what you really need to do is you really need to understand how to really transform your mind so that your mind and your brain doesn't produce these cravings anymore. That is the real ending of addiction. So there is a way to do that. It's like I was saying before, because the subconscious is promoting the addiction as a solution at the time when there's a strong emotion. It's trying to change your state of being at that time to something that's going to make you feel better, like have less pain and some pleasure. But if you have some skills where you can handle strong emotion and feel safe, even though it's uncomfortable, but actually have a deeper emotional capacity and an access to a state where you know and feel that even though there's this strong emotion, that essentially deep down you're okay. And if you've practiced that, and if that's really developed, your subconscious will also recognize that as well and not promote the addiction. So again, this requires some skills, some understanding, some transformation. Now, what's common is just trying to override that strong emotion with willpower or with self-talk, just trying to say it's going to be okay, or repressing it and trying to ignore it or distract from that strong emotion. And this really doesn't resolve that emotion. And this is why addiction comes in, because the subconscious is trying to take care of you when your conscious mind doesn't have the wisdom, the understanding, or the skill. So the next uh, relapse trap is boredom and loneliness. I mean, how many people do I know who've been my clients, or how many people do you know, even yourself? I know from myself that when you stop your addiction, your life just seems kind of empty. Um, and there's many reasons for that. One main reason is because sometimes your addiction has really taken up a major part of your life. It's really taken up so much time, depending on what the addiction is, particularly substance addictions, or even, you know, behavioral addictions like gambling or online gaming. You know, these suck up so much time that you disconnect from the rest of the connections in your life. And when when you stop your addiction, you feel the emptiness and the void that's left, um, because these connections in your life haven't been maintained, and there's a real possibility of feeling lonely there. So one of the stages in preparing to quit in a safe and sustainable way is to really start to look at what are your interests and passions. Uh, what activities do, give you what we would call healthy dopamine, um, healthy pleasure, healthy activity. So, and you start to recognize these and start to develop these again, so that when you do quit your addiction, you're not left in a hole with nothing. And of course, loneliness is, I mean, you can be lonely in a crowd, in a big city with plenty of people around, and you can be completely content alone in the wilderness. So loneliness is not about the presence or absence of other people. Loneliness is a state of being. It's a state of disconnection with ourselves. And in a sense, boredom is too. I mean, boredom isn't just the absence of activity. You don't need activity to not. You don't need to have activity to not be bored. You can be doing nothing and be completely content. Contentment means that there's nothing more that you want to add to the situation, because the situation is already full. It's already satisfying. And we actually have this capacity, this state within us, because that the more we get to really experience our deeper nature, the more that we experience the qualities of what we are. And one of those qualities is this deep peace and contentment. And with deep peace and contentment, there is no boredom or loneliness. So you see, addiction then becomes a pathway for a real transformation in your life. You start to realize that the reason why the addiction was there is because there were so many um, activities and pursuits that you thought were important, but were really just you were doing them because you had to, but also um, you ended up getting trapped in them because they kind of filled this empty space that opened up when you didn't do anything. So many people, when they come to me, they don't know how to sit still. They don't know how to just be. And that's not their fault. It's nobody's fault that that's occurring. It's just our society hasn't promoted an understanding of that. Instead, it's promoted an understanding of retail therapy, of entertainment, filling this void with external situations and experiences. But that's okay, because this is a journey, and if you're here, then you're finding your way to a deeper solution. You're finding your own way. So the next relapse trap is, believe it or not, being overconfident. And this, when I think of this, being overconfident, it always, what comes to mind is many, well, not a lot, but there's a decent percentage of people, my clients, that they quit their addiction, and then at some point they think, well, if I'm so strong now, and if I'm so over my addiction, I I should be able to try my addiction and not be addicted, right? I mean, that's the logic. The logic is that I can have my addiction and not be addicted. So they have a drink, or they have a smoke, or whatever it is, have a gamble, and think it's all okay. Now, in the method that I have developed and I teach, you don't actually need to never have a drink again, or never have a smoke, or never gamble again. It's not about that. It's about having about that activity not filling a void. It's not making up for a lack of a deeper understanding, a deeper state of being. So it's true that if someone, like for me, for example, I mean, I can have a drink or a smoke if I wanted. I don't actually want to. Freely, I don't want to. And so I'm not tempted to do that. But I know that I could, um, because my state of being is generally pretty stably content now. Of course, there are ups and downs, but they don't last very long, and they don't go very deep. Um, Things have changed a lot, but I don't subscribe to this logic that I should test myself out. I mean, if you think that you need to test yourself out, that means you're not sure. That means you're not 100% confident that, um, like deep down, you're not sure whether or not you really um, are in a good place, a place of stability, a place of sobriety that's really unchallenged. And this so-called overconfidence is really, it's really kind of like an overcompensation for, the doubt as to whether you are okay or not. And so this test is there to try and, prove that you are okay. But the very need for the test shows that you're not ready yet. So, if you get these temptations and this false logic that you should be able to test your addiction by trying your addiction, test your sobriety, well, that's a trap. Right there, that's a trap, and there should be big red flags waving all around if that's occurring. I mean, anyone who's genuinely content doesn't. You have free will, and there's no temptation to put poison in your body or waste your time doing an activity that is really, not satisfying at all. I mean, we're talking about things like gambling, pornography, sex, um, just even binging on Netflix. I mean, if you're doing those activities to fill a hole, fill a void in yourself, that hole's still there. It's not going to be filled. There might be some temporary distraction, pleasure, but then it's gone, and you're back to where you were. You see, it's like trying to dig a hole in the sand at the beach and fill it up with water. The water just keeps on sinking, doesn't it? It never fills up. So that's what addiction, trying to satisfy yourself with addiction, that's kind of what you're doing. So you want to get deeper. And this speaks to the next trap. Number 5 here is not resolving the root of your addiction. You see, your addiction, and we did talk about strong emotion as well, your addiction is there for a reason. It's there because your conscious mind doesn't have an understanding of this inner discontent. Now, this inner dissatisfaction that's there, it can be like strong, or it can be quite subtle, but it's kind of always there when you stop, when you're not doing anything. You quickly want to, you know, break that stillness because you're not comfortable. It's often to do with, not always, but often to do with unresolved emotion. Could be from earlier traumatic events, either childhood or adult life. It can be there because of present discontent, unfulfilled, uh, dysfunctional situations in your life. It could be that you don't feel meaning or purpose in your work, or you feel disconnected in your relationships, or devalued, or maybe you don't value yourself. So all of these things that I've just mentioned, they create this kind of open wound. And one of the ways that we avoid touching that wound, or that wound being hurt, is by, distracting away, being involved, ignoring it. And we're not really taught well in our society how to handle this or how to approach this. And I don't think our society is really very good at acknowledging it. It's often seen as weak or bad if you have a vulnerability or an emotional, ongoing emotional challenge like this. But actually, it's quite normal. We're not born with all this knowledge, and certainly our parents and their parents and their parents' parents didn't have all of this knowledge, so they weren't able to pass it on. And so we grow up in an incomplete environment, an environment where we don't have complete knowledge, we're not trained, and we're not even shown that we need to look at it or how to look at it. So this is a big area, and it really is part of why your addiction is present, and it's definitely a big part of why your addiction keeps coming back, you see, because unless this underlying root is not addressed, of course your subconscious is going to try and do something about it, which is make you feel a bit more pleasure or a bit less pain in your present day-to-day environment, which is what your addiction's doing for you. So now, having said all of this, it sounds like this is like a massive psychological process that's going to take years, or maybe an impossible task to achieve. Well, you don't need to resolve all of it in order to quit your addiction. You only need to understand a bit more about it, take some responsibility around that, instead of blaming others for it. I mean, you're the only one that can do anything about it, no matter how and who was involved in this wound being created within you. I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what's happened and who else is at fault, we're the only ones that can do anything about it. So we need to be aware of that and take some responsibility. And we need to learn some skills as to how to be with these challenging emotions, and how to inquire, investigate and unpack what what is there within us. And it's not impossible. It's like getting to know yourself on a deeper level. And you want to do that in a safe environment. You want to do that with, people that understand and who can, support that process. But like I said, you don't need to, you know, become a saint in order to quit. You just need to have some understanding of how to be without emotion, and then some skills to access um, an inner okayness, a state of inner okayness, even while you're resolving the root um, inner wounds, and while the strong emotions are there. And all of this, they're the same skills that you use in order to handle withdrawals as well. So number 6 is the sixth relapse trap, is really in a way encompasses everything that we've been talking about, which is having limited awareness of how your addiction works, about yourself, which is what we've just been talking about, and about your immediate world, even just right now while you're watching this video, just being present, because we just, our awareness is in a sense always focused. It's always kind of hyper focused on one thing or another. And what needs to happen is for our awareness, we need to develop the skill that we can open our awareness to more of what is going on in our immediate present, but also more of what's going on inside our body in terms of feelings, and in our mind in terms of, in our desires, our fears, our hopes, our memories, and our thoughts. So the awareness pathway is really a pathway where you can start to get to the root of your addiction. You can get to the root of boredom and loneliness. You can learn how to be with strong emotion, and you can learn to overcome withdrawals, cravings, and fight or flight. So really, number 6 is really, this kind of a summary as well. So if you're more aware of what your addiction is, you're more aware of what cravings are, of how they work, you realize that, and you're aware of, more of your own capacity, you start to realize that you can handle cravings, you can handle strong emotions. You develop this deeper state where you're not bored or lonely, and you do understand the root of your addiction, which is really the root of your discontent in your life. So opening awareness is challenging. It can be challenging because you're really kind of opening yourself up to what is uncomfortable. But that's the way that healing occurs. That's the way that transformation occurs. The thing is, you want that to be done in a safe and controlled way, rather than it just bursting out uncontrollably in your life, in relationships with anger or, fear, or, overconfidence or regret, selfishness or overgiving, all of these ways of compensating, which are really, in a way, products of, this limited awareness. So if you want to learn more about this, I mean, obviously you can see that there's a lot behind this. If you want to learn more, I'm doing a free workshop on Sunday, and so I'll leave a link in the video if you want to reserve a place for that. It's all it really is I'm just going to be turning up on a Zoom call, and I will talk a bit more about, mind transformation and the awareness pathway. And then we will just open up for questions, and you can, you know, we can discuss your actual situation and what it is that really concerns you, or what questions or problems that you feel might hold you back from quitting your addiction. Anyway, so if you're watching this video now, you feel free to reserve a place, and then I might see you there. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. And if you do want to learn a little bit more about some of the things I've been talking about, you can look back at some of my earlier videos. They all are coming from the same approach, but it's a big topic, so that's why we've got a lot more videos to cover yet. All right, take care. Have a great day, and I shall see you sometime in the next video or on Sundays. Bye.